to order, please. Thank you, everybody, for being here. I certainly appreciate it. I know that it's a Wednesday evening and folks would probably rather be doing a lot of other things, but we have many policies to go through, and I want to thank Kelly for doing such a good job of organizing everything and bringing this information to us. In consideration for the fact that we had policy 5131.8, which is our electronic device policy that was on the November policy meeting agenda, and we were not able to get to it that evening. We're going to start with that instead of the other items that are from Series 5000. So Kelly, I will turn this over to you for the start of the conversation. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you, Kate. So this policy, as you had indicated, we reviewed at the November meeting or previewed at the November meeting. Just to provide some background, this is on use of electronic devices, particularly to students in our school environment. Policy primarily applies to our secondary age students, as this is where we are seeing the use the most, but also does have a provision for expectations at the elementary level as well. Just to remind the policy committee, this work was done through a series of several subgroup committee meetings that were representative of board members, principals, teachers, parents, and student input, which helped us to inform the policy. We were able to review some of the current practices and protocols that are in place across our schools. There are some minor differences between different schools. For example, across the middle schools of do they allow phones at lunch versus not, and so forth. And so this policy really lays the groundwork to allow the administrators to set more stringent rules, policies, and procedures to allow devices where it supports instructional opportunities, but to limit or prohibit devices where it interferes. So for example, not having access to a cell phone in an academic learning environment is something we'd like to see across the board. Depending on the age of the student, allowing some limited access during, beginning of the school transition, end of the school transition, out of the day, possibly during lunchtime, for example, at the high school level, or maybe during hallway transitions, and will really allow us to maximize. The whole premise of this is to maximize instructional opportunities for kids and to limit the distractions that they frequently cause. So I'm happy, it's quite a lengthy policy, so I'm happy to answer any questions about the content of it, but to give the backdrop, this is really the purpose of it. There clearly for this policy will need to be more spelled out regulations once the board adopts the policy.
Kelly, thank you for that introduction. Committee members, we're looking at the electronic devices policy, P5131.81. Hopefully you've all had a chance to take a look at the information in that policy. And does anyone have any questions about this or comments, suggestions, concerns? Teresa? You're muted, Teresa, sorry.
This is just for high school and middle school?
So it does apply to all levels. So it applies to all of our school levels, so elementary included. But I do think that the need to spell out more strict or stringent rules really is at the middle and high school level. But we don't know what the future holds. We are seeing some watch devices that are attached to smart devices occasionally at the elementary level, and really just want to make sure that we limit the distraction in the school environment K-12.
This is not going to cost us anything, is it?
This will not cost us anything. There was some conversation earlier on about there are some districts that purchase things. One example, a name brand is called a Yonder bag, where the phones are, it's similar to what you would see at like a concert, that they'll collect the phone, put it in the bag, and you can't use it. We are not opting to go that way. We would like to see students, either store them away in their lockers or in their backpack, or leave them home if they so choose, and just not have their hands on a cell phone device or other similar electronic device during class time.
Thank you.
Thank you. A couple of questions. So Kelly, would you say that on the first page of the policy where we are now, if you go down to paragraph number 3 that begins with the word thus, would you think that that would sum up, give a just an overall summary of our goal with this policy?
Yes, I think that's a great paragraph that highlights the goal.
Okay. So that is I do too. And on the, I'll call it page 1, 2, I think it's page 3. Okay, 1, 2,
Got it.
3, 4.
Right.
Middle of the page that starts with the word students. Right
Mhm.
there, yeah.
Right here.
And it goes on to talk about teachers and staff. And the third bullet, which reads model the digital teachers and staff to model the digital habits and the utilization of personal technology and social media in alignment with the district policy. Okay, yeah.
Mhm.
Everybody have that? Okay. So I just want to, I think that that's very important. And when it says teachers and staff, and that's fine. I would love for it to talk about a broader engagement. So let me just honestly say that it's not just the teachers, the staff. And so when we, what we call them professional educators, um, from the top down leadership, staff, I don't know what that really means, but I would love to make sure that we are including administration and even the Board of Ed. I watch
Mhm.
when we watch our videos of the meetings, I can't tell you, how many times, people are speaking before us and our members are on their cell phones, electronic devices. And that's not just the board, but administration, just at the whole board meeting. So I'm wondering how we can incorporate that to include everyone and not just staff. Doesn't get it for me where you're saying teachers and staff. I'd like to make it broader.
So Juanita, thank you. I appreciate your feedback. You're referring to the bullet point that I just highlighted where it says teachers and staff, renaming that to really indicate all district personnel.
Yeah, it's we talked about a collective action that we've talked
Agreed.
about in it.
Mhm.
And you said the Board of Ed, administration, staff, students, parent, that overall
Mhm.
that we have to present as a united front and therefore somewhere indicate that this is also the modeling needs to be with all of us.
Mhm. I would agree with you. So I think I would open it for discussion on what people think is an appropriate title change here. And if in changing the title, we still think the bullet points below it tie in the critical or key components. And I do just want to spell out below, you also have a family and caregiver section and a student section that spells out responsibilities as well. So I think it's important to look at those sections as a group.
So Terry, I see you have your hand up. I do want to just recognize Al also had his hand up. But I want to make sure that we're continuing this conversation. So Al, are your comments in reference to this
I'll wait.
specific
I'll wait.
conversation?
The further discussion will be about.
Thank you, Al. Terry, did you want to speak directly to this topic as well?
I don't think the board should be included on this. It would be in our own area of guidelines. but not when this is for the school system in general. Um, but under board,
bylaws.
yeah, I mean, I don't think that's right here in this instance. This is a focus on students, teachers, administrators as well. It's where we have our own set of guidelines and we should be under that area. I don't object to putting something like that in our guidelines. It's just that I don't think here is the spot. That's all.
Okay. Thank you for the feedback. Juanita, you have your hand up again?
I do, only because, Teresa, on page 2 of this document, we're talking about a collection, a collective action. And they gave the definition that we are all working on this together. A collective action means an action taken together by a group of people, and they specifically name us. Board of Education, administration, staff, students, and parents to achieve a common objective. So
So,
that's why I am bringing my comment forth, saying, I agree with you. We certainly need to have in our board policy something about modeling. And even if we took that where it says model the digital habits and utilization of personal technology and social media in alignment with the district policy, that even if we can incorporate that somewhere in the beginning as our goal, that would be, our goal also in the policy.
so what if in looking at this, we were to do something like remove teachers and staff? So it just says school leaders. And then there's a section immediately, and maybe you repeat school leaders with a colon there, because that would include all every all of our educators
Okay.
and our administrators. And then what if we added under students a section for Board of Ed specifically, which restates that the board understands its role in modeling the digital habits and utilization of personal technology and social media in alignment with the district policy. So basically restating that one point that you drew out, Juanita, and making a separate heading for Board of Ed and including that point, because I think that's the one that you were sort of trying to look to broadly apply.
I like the idea of changing the teachers and staff to school leaders. If everybody thinks that would cover what they wanted to cover. I'm not sure, are you saying then to take that and incorporate that into the board, the policy for the board, or another section just for the board?
So I'm suggesting, so we have all these groups that are listed out that are part of, to your point, the collective action. And we have them segmented out, by by school leaders, by families and caregivers, by students. And we could potentially add another category in that same list for Board of Education that restates that with that one bullet point, which appears currently under school leaders.
Well, I think that would certainly make us part of that collective action. I'd like to hear other people's either suggestions or reaction to what we've discussed so far.
Sure. Committee members?
I personally don't like it. Not as a BOE member, no. I think the focus is on what's going on in school. This is after school. This is at a meeting. We're all in attendance. No. I haven't seen a blatant, you know, people on their cell phones during a meeting. I don't see it.
Mm.
I have to respectfully disagree with that. I definitely see folks on their cell phones very regularly at our meetings. And, in consideration for the fact that we are all volunteers and we have to take time out of our lives to come to the meetings, I understand there are definitely instances where perhaps you're being contacted by your workplace, or you have a family member who's reaching out to you for an emergency or personal situation that really requires your immediate attention. We're all adults at the table, and I think that those circumstances come up. But I do think that, we also have to understand that we are operating in full view of the public, and the way that we conduct ourselves and the way that we handle situations is reflected back to the public. So, I think there are definitely instances where it is my belief someone is not dealing with a personal emergency or situation. And I will myself acknowledge that there are times where I have been on my phone at a meeting for something that was not urgent and required my immediate attention. So I think that, in the spirit of supporting the work that we're trying to do from top to bottom with our district, it's important that we as board members hold ourselves accountable to the same standards we're asking for our administrators, our educators, our students, and our families to honor. Michelle?
I agree with Teresa. I know that this had come up in the past. It was brought up. I actually wasn't there for that meeting. I have seen a reduction in what you're saying and with the board. I don't know if you've seen that. Again, it does bring up, there's members during our board meeting that are, typing and updating and taking notes, and, everybody learns or processes differently. I think it's, again, a volunteer situation. I agree with Teresa.
Okay, thank you for the feedback.
Thank you.
Other committee members?
So Kate, then I would go to page 2 under collective action and remove the words that are in parentheses.
Juanita, I just want to make sure this is the part I've highlighted is what you're referring to.
That is.
And if I could just add, I just want to remind everyone that the 5,000 series, because this is our first policy, at least this year in reviewing 5,000 series, the premise of the 5,000 series policies, of which this is one of them, is student policies. That's not to say that there's not references to parents, administrators, Board of Ed members as part of our collective role to support students. But the premise of where this falls in our policy manual is under students. And so certainly whether you choose to make an addition to this policy or to your board series policies is certainly up for discussion. But it is okay to provide levels of support for students through other members in our educational community that support the goal of implementing the policy for students.
Thanks for the clarification, Kelly. I know that we have two other board members on here. Seeing no other feedback from committee members on this issue, I just want to make sure that we ask for feedback from the other board members who are present. Gladys or Louisa, do you have any thoughts on this?
My thought is, if we're going to add the part in about the use of cell phone, I think that we need to include it on our board structure as far as a policy concerning the board. I'm not really comfortable with adding that into this policy. So, that's, I really haven't gotten the full digest, and all the corrections that you need to make. I'm only looking at what Kelly has brought to us that we can take out, add from, but you know, you have to digest those take out and add to before you really commit, well, this would work for me. It might not work for another group that's coming on. So that's just my thought.
Thank you, Gladys. Louisa?
Thank you, Kate. Yeah, I think I'm going to echo a lot of the sentiment that's being said. Whereas, I think this policy, we're dealing with the students and their use of the electronic devices. I think as board members and as adults, we know, and us as a collective group can talk about it and how we feel we should handle it amongst ourselves. But I don't think that we need a policy or that it's a place for us to be putting our policy in with the policy of the students. I think that I just don't think it's the right place for it here.
Okay, so given this feedback, make sure I understand the preference of the group here. We would adjust the collective action to remove the specified groups. We would adjust under responsibilities in supporting the implementation of and adherence to district policy school leaders. We would adjust that from teachers and staff to school leaders. Those are the two changes that we've talked about. And then we would potentially consider an adjustment to the board bylaws in some way that would reflect our commitment to supporting this policy. Is that accurate?
That sounds good, Kate.
Could you make the
Okay.
writing a little bit bigger, please?
Sorry, Kelly, you're on mute, but I think you were just saying you'd do that.
Sorry, I apologize. Is that a little better?
No, that's not. That's about the same size as it was before.
So
Is
just those two changes.
How about now, Miss Cooper?
Yes, that's better.
Okay.
Could you just read the changes for me? Because I stopped in between time. I'm babysitting.
So do you want to go ahead, Kate?
Sure. So there's a specific section, it's section D of this policy, which is specific to students. And under that, there is a heading called responsibilities in supporting the implementation of and adherence to the district policy school leaders. And then there are 3 different sections that are outlined. One is for what we've now titled school leaders, one section that was called families and caregivers, and one section called students. And we made the adjustment from teachers and staff to school leaders. The idea with that being it is a more inclusive term. It would include not only teachers and education staff, but it would also include administrators in that understanding. So that's the one that Kelly is looking at right now.
So,
And
Kate,
then, yep,
okay. On, Kelly, can we look at page 3 at the bottom? And so if I'm not mistaken, there is a section already called school leaders. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, so I know, I'm sorry, Kate, I know you're going through what, so it would be redundant for us to change teachers and staff. I'm wondering if we can take that third bullet under teachers and staff and move that up to copy it under school leaders. Does that, instead of changing school leaders, leave it as teachers and staff and take that third bullet and copy it under school leaders? Otherwise, I'm sorry, because I think we already have school leaders on page 3. I'm sorry, I didn't see that because it was at the bottom of page 3.
If
So
I may
just-
interrupt, they already, the titles, some of the titles is a repetitive based on
Right.
school.
Right.
Oh.
So at the bottom of page 3, school leaders is already there with a number of bullets, right, of how they would support
Yeah, but if you
this
continue on,
policy. The thing that is not there is the modeling.
okay, but if you continue on, scroll to, here we go, Kelly, keep going. Just stop right there. So stop, go back. Where we have highlighted teachers and staff, there's another repeat. This is another repeat, the continuation from it. So what you're doing, you basically, I'm just a little confused. That's it. I don't know
Right.
why we want to do that. I honestly, I think if we title it teachers, administration, and staff, bingo, that's it. It covers everybody.
You mean starting at the bottom of page 3?
No, it's
Starting
like
at
four.
the bottom of page 3?
Just like what Kelly just did. Teachers, administrators, and staff
Okay,
covers
but-
everybody in the district.
Okay, but please go to the bottom of page 3. I know it's cut off from a printed part. There's already right here, responsibilities in supporting the implementation of and adherence to the district policy. And it says, what are so the title is school leaders. Right? If you go up a little bit, Kelly,
No, it's the
right
title.
there,
is not-
school
the
leaders.
title-
Now, these are the bullets that come under the school leaders.
No,
unless
no, the title
those
is
are.
the titles is responsibilities in supporting of the implementation of and adherence to the district's policy, school leaders. School leaders is not the headline.
So are you saying that it was repeated in error down there again?
It's not repeated, it's a continuation, as you can see above, which says teachers, administrators, and staff. It's a continuation from a previous.
So I think, Al, to Juanita's original point, what she was discussing was moving that one particular bullet point in recognition of the fact that everybody is responsible for that modeling. If we were to, we could certainly rename it to teachers, administrators, and staff. But given that the 2 bullet points above it are, kind of specific to in-classroom work, I
Mhm.
just am trying to make sure that we're doing this in a way that makes sense. You're absolutely right that responsibilities in supporting implementation of and adherence to the district policy school leaders is just a continuation. And it is confusing the way that it's done, but this is just how CABE writes its policies.
Okay.
And, part of our adherence to that, we are, it's within our purview to make those, to adjust those, but I'm not sure it makes sense for us to do that. Kara?
Sorry, yeah, and just as a way to, because I think I understand, Juanita, what you're trying to achieve. And I think it goes back to, rather than kind of working in the bullets that exist and which kind of give direction to the different groups on how they need to support, if you broaden out a little bit and you go into the beginning of the policy document, I think there might be, and this is just a suggestion, in the opening, right, in the statement, where the board recognizes the collective response is required, you might want to add a line in there that says, as such, all adults working with young people, working with our students, should be modeling the habits, the digital habits and personal use responsibility at all times to support this, understanding. So I'm wondering if you can maybe beef up the opening, because this is the board saying, we believe phones are a distraction and are not good to have in school, right? They're a disruption to the learning environment. Everything else, all the bullets are how the school's going to implement it at the school level, the people in the school. A little bit further up in the opening is really about the collective understanding of why this is important and how we're going to support and model what we're doing. And I think that might be the place to make the stance where every adult working with kids and working in the school system has a responsibility to model positive habits and good digital citizenship and personal responsibility for use. Just a thought. I'm not really weighing in so much. I'm just trying to think of a way to capture what's needed without really messing with the framework underneath that kind of seems to work well with the delineation of responsibilities. Just an idea.
Thank you for the suggestion, Kara. Committee members, what do we think about that suggestion?
I like it.
I'm in agreement. And when Kelly is done, I just have a question.
Could we, Juanita, I'm certainly, if there's a question about this, I'm wondering if we should just
No.
agree on language before we move on. I know, Kara, you
Okay.
threw out a bunch of good suggestions. I just tried to capture a little bit. Every adult working within the Danbury Public Schools has a responsibility to model. Oh, Kara, I can't hear you.
To be models for positive digital citizenship and I might have reversed this to be let me go back to the language already. I should have just jotted it down while I was rattling it off. Promoting effective digitalship and modeling personal use responsibility. You can massage it a little bit, but something along those lines.
I'm good with that.
Well, you kind of repeat from the,
Yeah, I think it needs some finessing.
yeah, you've got the,
Yeah.
Uh,
I can try to play with it a little bit if you want to.
I think, and just using plain word cell phone.
Right.
Well, there are other digital devices that this would apply
Right.
to, so we just want to make
Or
sure we're
social
covering our
media
bases.
or something.
Mhm.
I think one of the fears is that as we write this policy, we know that it's going to be in place for a few years. And so we're seeing, personal recording devices that are now on phones, on eyeglasses, and there's no way to know in 6 months what the next personal digital technology device will be. So keeping it global kind of encompasses everything, even though probably 5% of this is cell phones. There are some other things that we want to make sure are covered broadly by this policy.
I like it.
Every adult
I like
working
the
with
idea.
working with students in the Danbury Public Schools has the responsibility to promote digital citizenship and model personal use and responsibility. Model personal use responsibility. There you go.
Does that look okay to everyone?
Yeah.
Is that
Or
personal
take a-
use responsibly and not responsibility?
Or we
Would
could-
it be responsibly?
Yes.
How about
Responsible personal use. I like that better,
I
Cal.
think that
Yep.
sounds better.
Yeah,
It was weird, awkward.
Yep.
well, I like that. Yeah, much
That's
better.
better. Much better.
So do we now want to go back and change that heading back to teachers and staff below? And we want to remove that last bullet point? Do we want to leave that last bullet point?
I
do we want to leave the heading as it is?
No, teachers and staff would be my suggestion. I did want to ask Kelly about going back to page 1 at the bottom where it says responsibilities in supporting the implementation of and adherence to, and it's in bold.
At the bottom of the page.
No, you can go.
As I added something in, it throws off the paging a little bit, Juanita.
Oh,
So
okay.
I might be
So-
on top of page 2 now. Which paragraph, can you just read?
Okay.
Is this one restrictions?
No. So
No.
on the very first page,
Yeah,
oh, I think it's first page. Let me see. I'm sorry.
that's okay.
It's where we continue to put in the word continued. So when we gave the definitions, and then we went on to,
There's a few places it has continued. Are
Right.
you
so
referring?
right there, personal technology use in schools have continued.
Mhm.
And
Right.
so why do we have the word continued?
So
So
the
that-
word,
I know
Go
it's
ahead.
Sorry, Kim,
continued
go
from
ahead.
the first page,
Mhm.
the title.
Mhm.
So, yeah, so,
Go ahead, Kate. I'm sorry.
It's just, it's a function of the way that CABE formats the policies to make sure that folks understand that this next section, is a continuation of that same heading, and that all of those things fall under that heading. Because it's, it's now in section B, and it has, it's a break in the policy. So they want to make sure that it's clear that this is all part of the same heading and part of the same content.
okay. So as we continue to scroll down and we come to the heading students, electronic devices,
Mhm.
and we continue down to, it'll start with the word respond. Oh, it says that a lot of places. Keep going down to the last bullet right there. So responsibilities in supporting the implementation, adherence to the policy. Can we stop there? But if you go to the next, then it says school leaders. Why do we have? I want to
School
put a
leaders is
period.
just separated the way that the page
I
break
know.
is happening right now.
I can
Oh,
do
No,
that.
but I
But-
want to put a period at the end of district policy. And the next heading is, school leaders. And I'm assuming that these bullet points are specific to the school leaders. Do you know what I'm saying? And then further down, we talk about the specific bullets, I guess, for the teachers and staff, because those are not things that we would require of the school leaders, right? That create engaging lessons. So I
So
need help
are you
here in understanding that there is a distinction between the school leaders and the teachers and staff and the families and caregivers. Everybody has different bullets. So why aren't we putting a period at the end of responsibilities in supporting the implementation of and adherence to the district policy, period?
I think this
Teachers and
recognizes,
staff,
and
where are your bullets?
I could be misinterpreting this one,
No,
but
not
the
the
way I'm
whole-
interpreting it,
Okay,
what
Go
I'm
ahead.
interpreting this as, teachers and staff, families and caregivers, and students are all considered to be part of the school leadership.
And collectively,
That's how I'm reading this.
the way I interpret it is collectively everything falls under the role and responsibility of school leaders. School leaders have a responsibility to oversee students. They have a responsibility to oversee teachers and staff. They have a responsibility to inform parents and caregivers of this policy. So the title is, even here when with the teachers and staff, and we did change this back where I'm just highlighting, the total title here is responsibilities in supporting the implementation of and adherence to the district policies, school leaders, and then there's a colon. And then it lists out the specific responsibilities of teachers and staff thereafter, but acknowledging that any expectation of teaching and teachers and staff falls directly under the direct purview and responsibility of a leader.
Terry,
Um,
thank you, Kelly.
if you notice the sections, school leaders has section C, the teachers has section D. So that's how they are redundant, but they were separating the areas in case you want to further amend it later on or do whatever you want. But it is confusing. I gotta say that it is confusing. It looks like it repeats itself. Yeah, but one section is school leaders. That's C, then D is the teachers and staff. And then the next section is continued E with students, I guess. It's
So you're
continued.
telling me that the teachers and staff and family and caregivers are all under the same letter D,
Yeah.
and students?
And I think that's more to be able to corral the different responsibilities for each section. And I put it all under one because it looks the same almost. It looks the same.
So I'm reluctant to make adjustments to the way that this policy is organized by CABE. They take their recommendations from a pretty extensive staff of lawyers and legal support. And I think, I don't always understand the reason that they've labeled things or organized things, but there's typically some understanding that they have on their end for doing things this way. I know it can be confusing, but I would encourage us to, not really, look at this as an opportunity to rewrite the policy from an organizational standpoint. I think if we could focus on the content of the policy and if there are any, qualitative adjustments that we want to make. So with that said, are there other portions of this policy that folks have any thoughts or feedback about? And to recap, let's just discuss, if we could, the adjustments that we've made. Starting with on page 1, at the bottom there, right before we get to the definitions, per Dr. Casimiro's suggestion, every adult working with students within the Danbury Public Schools has the responsibility to promote digital citizenship and model responsible personal use. Are we all in agreement with that change?
I'm good.
I'm good.
Thank you, Al. Thank you, Terry.
Yes.
Thank you, Michelle. Juanita, is that okay, that change there?
Yes.
Thank you very much. Continuing down the page, we decided to keep teachers and staff as it was.
Mm-hmm.
Are there any other changes that folks feel we should make? Terry?
Back up under the collective action. Are we going to take out the Board of Ed?
I don't feel strongly one way or the other. I guess I would be more inclined to leave us in there to make sure that people understand we're part of the overall effort to create this policy and support it in our schools. It doesn't specify anything about our own personal involvement here, which I think was the source of conflict in our conversation. So I'd be inclined to leave it. But I certainly welcome
Yeah.
the thoughts of other committee members here.
I
thought we were
personally-
taking it out.
Yeah, I thought we were going to take it out and work it in our other
The
area,
other areas, yeah.
in our, under our, our board of whatever.
So, other committee members?
I would just leave it the way it is.
I thought Gladys mentioned she. Well, she's
Juanita?
gone.
She did, she
Oh.
had mentioned.
So on page 1 in paragraph 4, I believe I would take it out because I believe that it's already stated that the board fully recognizes that a collective response is required to ensure all members of the community join together to ensure all students have full access to district curriculum, the day-to-day instruction, healthy, constructive peer-to-peer relationship, and the foundational skills and attitudes. And we also then went on to add every adult working with students within the Danbury Public Schools has the responsibility.
So do we want to remove all the spelling out of the people that are part of the group? This is a definition. This is not specifying anything other than identifying
yeah.
the group that's involved in this decision making. So are we talking about just removing Board of Education? Are we talking about removing all of the named parties?
I think just the Board of Ed, that's where I'm at.
It was
But
just.
we're in
chat.
creating this policy, we're actually participating in the collective action. So I don't know that that makes much sense from a standpoint of what we're actually doing. I think it's an all or nothing kind of situation.
If I could interject just a thought, is we said all in the previous paragraph on the first page, and by all, we mean everyone inclusive of the board, administration, students, parents, caregivers. So if you choose not to explicitly spell out the who, I would recommend either leave it or remove it in its entirety and just collective action as a group of individuals, people that we referred to in the earlier paragraph. And if you don't want to spell it out, you could take out the parentheses of all people. But I think to remove one, it contradicts the sentence you added in highlight up here.
Gladys, did you want to say something?
No, I agree with Kelly. I the version. And if it's in inclusion in the first part of it, then why should we take it out now? So, and we are part of that group inclusion. So, yeah, it makes sense to leave it there.
And so can I just add that this is a definition. I don't feel that we have to be part of a definition defining the word collective action.
Right.
It
So
is collective action is a group of people taking action together to achieve a common objective.
right. So I think given the feedback here from Kelly, and the thoughts expressed by Ms. Cooper, I'd like to put it to each committee member, whether they would like to, yes, keep it in, or no, remove all of the named parties. So if you could just say yes or no to that, and then we'll have a consensus here.
What is
and
it?
make
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you, Kate.
So either folks are gonna vote, no, I want to remove everything in the parentheses under the definition of collective action. I want to remove all those parties, or yes, I want to keep them in.
Yes, I want to keep them in.
Juanita, no, take them out.
Michelle?
Take them out.
No? Okay. Teresa?
I'm going to pass because I just want the Board of Ed out.
No, we can't do that. Yeah.
Okay.
So that's our
Um,
pass.
Mrs. Cooper, did you want to weigh in as a ex officio member of this committee? No. Okay.
He's back.
In the interest, sorry,
Gladys?
in the interest of moving this forward, we have,
Yeah, why don't we take off the entire collective action completely?
I think it's referenced, it's defined here because it's referenced in the policy, so I don't think we should do that. But in the interest of the strong feelings that folks have about including the specific spelled out groups, I think we should just remove them in their
But it invol-
entirety.
But it involves all these groups to come together to accomplish our common goal, our common objective, and that is the cell phone policy.
And I agree
Together-
with Al. Yeah.
Together, we have to work together. You can't just eliminate the collective action just because the Board of Education should be taken out. No, we're all collectively into one. We have the same goal. We have the same
The
common
same
objective.
goal, but the problem is one issue. Students on social media. That's the issue.
Okay, we can't get into a side conversation here, all right? I don't want to disrespect anybody's
say-
thoughts or views here, but we're spending a lot of time
I would-
to make sure that we're outlining the definition of a word that's referenced in this policy. I don't think it changes the impact of the policy to remove the information that is in the parentheses. Those groups are still explicitly named above in the policy. It's just a point of clarification. So if there are folks who feel very strongly about not including the information in the parentheses, my inclination at this point is just to remove it. It does not change the content of the policy in any substantive way. So that's why I asked for a yes or no vote, okay?
Yeah, I'm
Um,
staying with my yes, but I'll say this, that the CAVE spends a lot of quality time with attorneys on when it comes to legal matters or language to certain things like this.
Point noted. Thank you. Dr. Casimiro, I couldn't tell if you had your hand up there. I just want to make sure.
I'm debating with my finger whether to enter the conversation. I just want to point out that the collective action and the reference to the board really is just the board signaling that they're part of, that they've recognized that this is an issue and that they're endorsing this, and that is their role, is that they're setting policy. That's the role here. And it's not to say that this policy is trying to dictate what the board members personally do with their cell phones. That the reference to the collective action means that we each have a role in the system to ensure the safety of our students in the classroom for a disruptive free environment, and that the collective piece at the board level is your policy, and that you're bringing this to the table and you're saying, this is really important. The administration has to execute on your policy and implement regulations and provide guidance at the school level. The staff and the teachers then have to model, they have to guide, they have to uphold those regulations, and our parents and caregivers need to be informed. And that's also on the school level and in the district level, really, to help broker that conversation. So the relationship to this policy here and the reference to the board is not one to micromanage what the board themselves are doing with their personal use.
Right.
This references that you collectively as a group are coming together to say this is an important matter, and your role here is you're setting policy. That's your role, and helping to kind of shape the direction of this. And then from there forward, there's tiered responsibility. But it's not to micromanage what the board is doing with their phones. And if the board wants to do that in another policy or venue or their bylaws and their own rules and how they conduct themselves, that is a separate document. But I just want to point out that I think that what this is referencing is that you're here together to say this is an important matter. That's it.
Thank you, Dr. Kesmer. Terry, you had your hand up first.
Um, that's how I looked at it originally, the way Dr. Kara was stating. But then it was brought up to include the Board of Ed under the teachers and staff and, both. That went into a whole different direction, in my opinion. I look at it as an administrative then, collective, a group. So I'm fine with it that way, but not including it uh, as a segment under the teachers, staff, administrators, Board of Ed. That was what
Okay,
was
that's
bothering me.
great. That's off the table. That's not
Right.
even an option at this point, so
Right.
I appreciate your clarification. Juanita?
I also wanted to signal that we had moved beyond having a section in the policy about the Board of Ed. We're very clear that that's gone. That's not even up for discussion right now in relation to this policy. We are talking about a definition, and the definition has already been clarified in paragraph number 4 on the first page. The board fully recognizes that a collective response is required to ensure all members of the community join together to ensure all students. And so when we go back to the other page, and we're just writing a definition of collective action. And so what is the meaning of collective action? It means an action taken together by a group of people to achieve a common objective. And so therefore, I don't understand why we have to have in parentheses and spell out what is already being highlighted further in the policy. And so now it's broken down already. We stated in paragraph 4, the Board of Ed. Later on, we talked about school leaders, administration, teachers and staff, students, parents and caregivers. So that was my rationale behind removing what is in parentheses in just the definition, which
Okay.
does not
I don't
necessarily
wanna
change.
I don't want to interrupt and I apologize, Juanita, but
That's
we've
okay.
been talking about this particular sentence for about almost 10 minutes now, and we just need to move forward because we have a lot of other policies to get through. And we're at 7
We took a
o'clock
vote.
already. So we've taken a consensus on this. I want to take a consensus one more time, given the reflection that Teresa made. So yes, keep it in. No, take it out. Juanita.
No, take it out.
Teresa.
I say keep it. And can we add teacher and staff?
No.
I think staff,
Oh.
teachers are covered by staff, so I think we're
Okay.
okay there. Al,
Yes, keep it.
Michelle,
Take it out.
I am going to vote to keep it in. I did not want to inject myself in it before, but we have all 5 people of this committee voting. Mrs. Cooper? Ex officio?
Keep it in.
Yay!
Okay, it's
Keep
gonna
it in.
stay in. At this point, are there any other specific parts of this policy?
There's feedback, Kate. There's feedback coming from something.
Does somebody have 2 connections going? I also hear the feedback.
I hear feedback too.
If anyone who's not talking could just mute, it will help.
Okay. Thank you very much, Kelly. Are there any other specific parts of this policy that anyone wants to bring forward to discuss, aside from the ones we've already discussed and resolved, so that we can move forward and make a recommendation to the board for a first read on this policy, please? Juanita? I see your hand up, Juanita. I just want to make sure there's nothing that additional that you want to add here. Okay. All right, seeing none, I'd like to ask for a motion to make a recommendation for first read of policy 5131.81 electronic devices with adjustments made by the committee.
I make that
Is there a
motion.
motion? Thank you, Al. Is there a second for that motion?
Second,
Thank you, Teresa. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstention? Motion so carries. Thank you very much. Appreciate that. This policy is going to be really important for shaping the way that we handle things in the district. So thank you. All right, moving on, we are about to start the 5000 series. Again, if we could just mute when you're not speaking, please. The 5000 series, which covers students primarily. So Kelly, I will turn this back over to you to start with policy 5110 on attendance.
Sure. Thank you very much, Kate. So these policies, as Kate referenced, cover students. We're going to start with attendance. And I do want to show you, you'll see that the first three policies under the current policies on the left-hand side, so 5110, 5111, and 5112, the revised policy for 5112 incorporates all three of the previous policies. So they've wrote a condensed version so that attendance, admissions, and placement or ages of attendance are all incorporated under the same policy. So the new revised policy proposed by CABE 5112 would in fact replace the three other policies if we decided to move forward with it. I do think it's important as we go into the policy, you will see it talks about ages that students are allowed entry into kindergarten, ages that students can remain to be educated within the school district. So I will pull the policy up on the screen and certainly open it up to questions. I did also want to add, there are quite a number of policies on here with the 5000 series. We can go through as many of them as we wish to do so tonight. I do want to make sure that questions are answered, and if there are any that we need to bring forward in the next meeting, we can do that as well. So this one really talks about the terms and conditions of who can attend your district. So what age does a parent need to enroll students in school? The fact that they need to be residents of the city of Danbury, and how they get placed in grade levels based on prior schooling or assessments of the district. And so I know everyone has had this to review, but if there are any questions, I will open it up for that. There is one thing that I actually received this morning. Here, I just want to highlight on the first line. I would advocate that we change it to remove who reached the age of 5 on or before September 1st because that's now the date of birth, and that refers to your kindergarten entry. It used to be that a child could turn 5 all the way up until January 1st. It's now been brought back to September 1st. So to bring that clarity, CABE did revise this policy just to put that wording in there. Otherwise, everything else in the policy is consistent with current practices, rules, and regulations. I guess I'll open it for questions.
Sorry about that. Teresa?
is there anything else besides that date that we should be aware of that's been changed?
The only other thing that was changed several years ago is the date of exit for special education students. That was 2 years ago, has now been extended. First, actually, right around the time of the pandemic, it was extended from the June of the year in which they turned 21 to their 22nd birthday. They then decided that, you know, it's disruptive if a student that, and this only applies to students with special needs. If a student with special needs is starting a school year, they should be allowed to finish it. They shouldn't have to leave on their 22nd birthday. So for example, if you had a birthday in October, you were exited on your 22nd birthday or March or whatever it may be. Now that student is entitled to stay until June, the end of the school year of the year in
Wow.
which they turn 22. So that is about 2 years. That is statutory language, about 2 years old. And that is outlined in this policy as well. That is the only substantial change that I can think of other than the date of entry into kindergarten.
Thank you.
Kelly, may I ask a-
Kelly,
Juanita, go ahead.
oh, okay. Kelly, can I ask a question about paragraph number 1, 2, 3, 4,
Yes,
beginning with children?
right here.
So does this policy cover our multi-language learners?
Yes.
Would that hold them? So I'm just wondering, in that paragraph where at the very end where it says the principal will determine the final grade placement for children, do we want to leave principal or the district, or because you know how they go through a different registration
Yes.
and testing and assessment? Is it the district, or I don't know. What do you think?
Juanita,
Is-
I do agree with you. From state statute, an administrator, that final
Okay, yeah.
decision lies with an administrator. It might be a little bit broader. What Juanita is referring to is in the previous paragraph, there's reference to a home language survey and a possible assessment. So that's for any student that's a multilingual learner that's coming into the district. The parent indicates that, for example, there might be a second language spoken in the home, or English may not be the child's first language. That is a flag to us to consider the child to see if they're eligible for English as a second language or multilingual learner services. And so oftentimes the head of that department will help determine, you know, grade placement based on their assessment results and age and prior schooling and so forth. Similarly, in the special education realm, it is not uncommon to have a supervisor of special ed do a comprehensive review of that child's program, placement, and so forth, and have input. I do think the important thing here, and Juanita, you bring up a very good point, is that we make sure that we specify that this authority resides within an administrator. But I think it can be broader than just building principal.
So Kelly, where you've highlighted the word principal, is that where you would make an adjustment?
I would just list administrator
Okay.
or district. We could use either word, district administrator, maybe district administrator.
Juanita, thank you for that clarification.
Could we say principal or district administrator?
We can do that. We could say and or district or.
Yeah.
Kelly, I
think
had a question that I'm looking for some clarification on. In the body of this text, it specifies under the enrollment heading, the parent or person having control of a child 5 years of age shall have the option of not sending the child to school until the child is 6 years of age by December 31st of any school year. The parent or person having control of a child 6 years of age shall have the option of not sending the child to school until the child is 7 years of age by December 31st of any school year. Could you just clarify that? I'm just not sure I understand what I'm reading here.
Sure. It essentially should just say up to age 7, the parent can keep a child out of school, technically speaking. But the expectation is after 5, they are notifying the public school district. So they're 6th year and they're set by age 7, they need to be enrolled in school. So it is wordy, but technically there is no, as long as they provide appropriate notification, there's not a mandate for those children per se to attend kindergarten. And so if you kept a child out of school, let's say until they were turning 6 or 7, there sometimes might be consideration for placement of that child in 1st grade, for example, if they've been in, another program or something like that.
Okay. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
It's very wordy, though. I agree with you.
Are there any other questions or concerns from committee members?
I guess my one question, Kate, is
Mhm.
we are looking at December dates, and in the beginning, we were talking about September. So in this situation, the December date is what takes precedence over, I believe, what we talked about September early on.
You're talking about what we were just talking about with the
Yeah.
5 and 6-year-olds?
Yeah, so in the beginning, we were talking about the date being a September date, right? And
Mhm.
now everything being referenced here is a December date. So I'm just want to make sure that that is accurate, or did I misunderstand something? Everything
To
seems
make
to
sure
be.
it's consistent with,
Yeah, just like,
the language ahead.
No,
yeah.
that's an
It's so
excellent question.
confusing.
Yeah. And I am 99% sure that that is accurate. And I'm just going to check one other thing while you guys continue to talk about this policy, just to make sure. I just want to make sure they didn't tweak a thing. I'm pretty sure that's still consistent, but before I say that, give me 1 second.
I have a
Yeah,
daughter with the December 30th birthday, so I'm like, what would that mean? Not anymore, but.
I have a December baby too, I know. Give me 1 sec.
Any other thoughts from committee members about this policy? Again, this is going to roll 3 of our existing policies into one. So just want to make sure nobody has any other questions. Terry?
while we're waiting for Kelly, the waiver process, is that just going to be for this year, or are we going to keep doing it every year?
So right now, and Teresa, I don't want to forget Michelle's question. I did just verify the updated policy with the revision of the kindergarten entry date, and those December 31st dates are accurate. So we should keep that. It's just the kindergarten entry date. But thank you. You made me
Thank you.
second guess myself when you asked the question, which is always good.
Thank
The kindergarten waiver process, and Kara, please feel free to interject. We learned recently that it is an expectation that parents that wish between that September 2nd through December 31st, if your child turns 5, you can apply for a waiver. It has to be in writing to district office, so district administration. And then we reserve the right to do a comprehensive assessment of your child, which might include assessing their academic readiness skills, their social, emotional, behavioral skills, talking to an early childhood provider, very comprehensive to make sure that it would be in that child's best interest to attend school before turning age 5 for kindergarten. And so that is required to do this year. And I think we're still looking into if that will continue beyond this school year, but right now it is a requirement for kiddos that are coming into the school year 25-26 school year.
Thank you.
Michelle?
So just quickly in that sentence, I think you had said that it was the decision of the administration as to whether or not they get the assessment. That is not something that is, provided to them irregardless. That is the decision of the administration, or do we automatically give them the assessment if requested?
So if you're referring to the students that are asking for the waiver, so that special
Yeah.
permission, basically you're returning 5 within the next couple months, upon request, we would issue an assessment.
Okay.
And that's upon written request of the parent or guardian of that child.
Okay. All
Mhm.
right. Thank you.
And there was a little bit of confusion around that because it was required when they changed the law last year for entry into kindergarten. We weren't unclear whether that would continue into this year, and we were just notified that in fact we do need to continue that process. So we had a meeting earlier this week, and we'll convene just to make sure that our protocol and process and procedure is tight and communicated clearly to parents. There is an update on our website. If you are a parent looking to enroll right under the entry to kindergarten, that refers to, if you wish to do this assessment, this is your process and this is who you can contact.
Okay, thank you.
Appreciate that clarification. So I don't see any other questions coming in from committee members about this particular policy. I just want to make sure, Mrs. Cooper, Lisa, do you have any questions about this policy?
I'm good, Kate. Thank you.
All right, thank you both. With that in mind, I'm looking for a recommendation, sorry, a motion to recommend to the full board for a first read of policy 5112, students, ages of attendance, admissions, placement, which will replace our existing policies 5110, 5111, and 5112. Is
I
there a
make the
motion on the
motion.
floor, please? Thank you, Al. Second.
Second.
Thank you very much, Teresa. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion so carries. Thank you very much. We're at 7:24. I don't want to push us too far. It's an hour and a half on Zoom is a long time, but I'm wondering if we can squeeze out one more policy, and that would be 5113 and 5113.2, attendance and truancy. What's the pleasure of the committee here?
I'm okay.
Tara, you're okay? Michelle?
I just want to point out the
Sorry, Michelle, you're on
paperwork,
mute.
paperwork says attendance and excuses. And on this thing here, it says attendance and truancy for 5113.
That is correct. And that is an error on my part. Thank you for pointing that out. The original policy was attendance and truancy. The new CABE update should read, if you see here, attendance and excuses.
Thank you.
Michelle,
I'm fine. Yeah. I
you're
think we'll
okay
go
with it?
Yep.
Juanita, are you okay to continue?
I am. I'm okay with
And
it.
Al, is that okay with you as well?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, let's just try to knock one more out, please, Kelly.
Okay, I will try to go. I think this one falls nicely in line. Basically, these are the last policy we just did, 5112, was the terms and conditions of how do you gain access or entry to Danbury Public Schools, and what is the procedure and process to do that. This is once you are a student enrolled in our district, what are your expectations around attendance? Really goes further. I'm going to scroll down on the screen to, and these are all state language and wording. What is a chronically absent child? What is a chronic absenteeism rate by student, by school, by district? So it really talks about, these are the terms and conditions and under which it is acceptable for a student to be out of school. This is prior to the pandemic, and I don't recall offhand the exact year, but there was very specific legislation that was put out around attendance that essentially says the first 10 days that a student is absent from school, the parent or guardian has to notify the school, should inform them of why the child is out. But essentially those first 10 absences is at the discretion of the parent or guardian. And so we want people to use those when students are sick, when they're, when there's a family emergency, those types of things, an appointment, a legal proceeding, things like that. After the 10th absence, it really says that a parent needs to have another source or documentation to then verify why the student is absent. So we're talking about students that are over 10 days in a school year, so day 11, 12, and so forth. And here it really talks about, and I think that's why the word excuses, what are the reasonable reasons for a child to be out of school after that 10th absence? And here in section D, it's very specific. It outlines exactly what those terms and conditions are. An illness, a religious holiday, a death in the family, or an emergency beyond the family's control, a mandated court appearance, lack of transportation provided by the district, or this extraordinary educational opportunities. That could be, for example, in rare circumstances, a travel abroad experience that a child earns a scholarship and needs to be, allowed or permitted to attend school abroad and participate in maybe a foreign exchange program or something like that. But really special circumstances and considerations. And it holds the parents accountable for providing documentation on that. As you know, it's been a district effort to increase and improve our district attendance, and we've made huge strides in that since COVID. We still have a ways to go. And so this policy mimics the statutory language, and really, I think, clearly communicates it to students and families about what our expectations are as a district. So I'll take
Thank you,
questions.
Kelly. Teresa?
What is our chronic absenteeism rate?
Sure. So we are running it daily now. I could not give you the current rate for January, but we were as a district hovering around, I would say, 13 to 15% kind of in the fall months. There are definitely pockets and spikes in different places, different grade levels, different student demographics, and that's varies sometimes by school and location. But we are looking to get back underneath that 10% chronic absenteeism, which we enjoyed in this district prior to COVID. Remember, at the height of COVID, we were in the 20s, the low 20s. So we have definitely made a significant reduction.
Teresa?
Do you have a percentage of the homeless in that rate?
Off the top of my head, I would need to disaggregate that information. I will say that as a subgroup, that tends to be a little bit more of a volatile population with attendance at school.
Thank you.
Other questions or concerns?
I'm
Oh,
so sorry. If I
Kelly.
could add one other thing. In the previous policy, I did not point it out, but you asked a really good question, Teresa. It talked about McKinney-Vento students, which is homeless students. That's how they're defined, as McKinney-Vento. And it talks about access and entry to school, basically eliminating the barriers. We know students that are homeless, right, may not be able to provide proof of prior enrollment, or might have a difficulty or challenge getting access to medical records and things like that. And so it eliminates those barriers and requires automatic entry into school, which we have found to be very, very helpful. We've made some staffing changes with our McKinney-Vento liaison in district, and I directly work with her, Miss Lisa Basher. She's phenomenal. We've increased our identification rates and supports to families. We have over 100 identified students in the district currently, and that's up quite a bit. And we while we do a great job identifying, we know that number is even bigger. And so she works to help families to access and make sure that they get immediately into school, to help with that absenteeism. We find once they're in school, we're usually able to sustain and maintain attendance because of the resources and supports and access, for example, to breakfast and lunch programs in school, trusted adults, warm, safe place to go. But that entry into school and how to get them in quickly is sometimes challenging.
Teresa?
I understand you want to get them into school. I'm concerned about immunizations.
Yep.
Is there ever a case where you let them in without immunizations? I mean,
So
even if we give it to them.
So our district coordinator of nursing services will review all of those cases. Our school nurses approve if a student has documentation of all their vaccinations. The school nurse looks at it and is able to say, yes, the student's medically cleared. In the instance of a student that is homeless or experiencing homelessness, we would then work with the school nurse and the district coordinator, and often access things like the RVNA has been a huge resource to us. our school-based health centers, and we will coordinate to make sure that those students can get safely into school and quickly vaccinated. We don't want to
Thank
put the
you.
burden or barrier on the family. Oftentimes to get an appointment, establish a pediatrician, or to walk into like an urgent care has a hefty price tag. And so part of this is recognizing that and figuring out what resources. But we take the health and well-being of all students very, very seriously. So we have to make sure that we provide quick access to medical care for that child so that we don't put any other child at risk.
Thank you. Thank you, Kate and Kelly. Thank you.
It's good for everybody to hear, Teresa, so I appreciate the questions. Thank you. Any other comments or concerns on this policy around attendance?
Sorry, Kate, I have a question.
Sure, go ahead, Juanita.
Kelly, can you expand on the the mental health days, how those are documented and how they're asked for, and they are still inclusive, right? Within our,
Yeah, they are.
they have
They
in the
They are
pandemic.
included. Post-COVID, that was a designation and a change. So thank you, Juanita, for asking that mental health days for students are there. They cannot be used consecutively and are documented as such in PowerSchool. The parent or guardian and or student, depending on age, needs to let us know that they are taking the day as a mental health day. Like I said, can't be back-to-back days, which is trying to prevent, long weekend, those kind of things. And we cannot ask for excessive documentation of them. So that is one limitation, but the students certainly reserve the right to do that. It's also a balance between we don't want to treat those days like, we want to honor the students that need those days, and definitely oftentimes conversations with families and pupil services staff to let them know that is an avenue of how they can document an absence if they are experiencing difficulty. We also want to dispel or dismiss this idea of 2 extra freebie days from students. As the parent of an 8th grader myself, if he knew that, he would ask me to take them. And so it's that careful balance between doing that, informing, people of their rights. It's clearly outlined in our policy, with making sure that we're balancing that with appropriate attendance at school and behaviors and practices we want to model for our kids.
Okay, committee members, any other questions, concerns? Non-committee members, any questions about this policy? Okay.
I did want to share, we also have outlined in here attendance rates in district and school attendance committees. We do them regardless of the attendance rates, but it's important to note that they're legally required. 10 and 15% they're required. But as a district, our practice is to do them both at the district level and the school level, and we will continue to do those.
Thank you, Kelly. Seeing no questions or comments coming forward at this point, I will ask for a motion to make a recommendation to the board for first read of policy 5113, attendance and excuses.
I make that motion.
Second.
Thank you, Al. Thank you, Michelle. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion so carries. Thank you very much. That was pretty quick. Do we want to push and try and do one more? 5113.2. This is connected because it's the truancy policy.
Sure.
Kelly, are you still with us?
I'm here.
Okay. I think that would leave us in a good position for the next policy meeting, since we'll have covered just about half of the policies. So if it's okay with committee members, if I don't see any objections, I'm just going to ask Kelly to move forward with 5113.2 around truancy. Thank you all.
Okay, so quickly on this, again, kind of a nice segue from the previous two policies. Chronic absenteeism is defined by missing 10% or more of school days, which was highlighted in the previous policy. The terms and conditions around when students can be in school or I'm sorry, excused from school. Truancy also highlights that we want to watch patterns of attendance. So when a student is absent 4 or more days in a month, it's also a flag for truancy. So while they may not have met the 10% threshold, for example, that we still want to pay attention to that because we know that once a student stops regular attendance at school, that it could be an indicator. Now, there are certainly exceptions to that rule, right? A student comes down with the flu and is out of school for the week, or COVID, or a number of illnesses. There are certainly exceptions to that, which is why it's important to monitor the data, but also know when you're looking at it from an individual student perspective, the why behind the rationale for each child being out. This policy also refers to the fact that the district should work collaboratively with parents and with outside community agencies, so can make referrals to outside support. So for example, Danbury Youth Services does have a truancy team that will help support families. With consent, we can make a referral to them, and they will also support families and work collaboratively with the school to help support re-engagement and reattendance at school. And there are a number of other agencies and partnerships that we have, but that's one that has been deemed as a truancy program. And so really helping to watch the data, monitor it consistently, know when there's flags for when students are not attending regularly, and then have the responsibility as a district to intervene and also elicit outside resources when it's appropriate to do so with the appropriate consent, of course. And so that's pretty much the premise of this policy.
Thank you, Kelly. Committee members, any questions about this policy? Give you a minute to look it over.
Just a quick
Teresa?
question. Who notices the numbers? Who keeps track
question.
of it?
So we do it both at the district level and at the school level. So there is an internal tracker, Kara Wanzer, who I know comes and does presentations for you. Her and her team pull the data monthly and report it out to buildings. And that is by trends and patterns, so percentages across the school, across the grade levels, and then individual student data. So if a student is truant or is chronically absent, it will be individualized for that student so that our school-based attendance teams are looking at that student level data and are saying, why is Johnny in second grade now out for 4 days in October and 4 days in November? What interventions have we put into place? And that is a regular ongoing. Our school attendance teams meet at least monthly. Most of them meet twice a month or even more frequently. And on that attendance committee that is usually comprised of your building principal, administrator, or assistant principal, your pupil services staff, your school nurses, usually a teacher representative, our family liaisons. They are all working to look at what students do we need to monitor, what students are flagging for difficulties with attendance, and how are we supporting those families. It's an extensive process. So very similarly to the way that we monitor students' reading data for are they meeting the benchmarks in performance, we're doing the same with their attendance, because we know if you're not in school, you're not accessing our curriculum and you're not learning as much as we want you to be.
Do we still have that LEAP grant to go to houses?
We do. Our LEAP grant, yes, we are fortunate to still have that. Our liaisons, though, are down because our funding is down from the state. The ones that we have are phenomenal, but we used to be fortunate to have one across every school. And now we are sharing between about 6 across the district. So we are down significantly in that area. It is something that your superintendent did put forward to support in the upcoming budget to restore those positions as they are critical.
Thank you, Kelly.
Okay, any other feedback or concerns from committee members? Non-committee members, any feedback on this particular policy?
I just want to ask Kelly, I can't, the part that says the board on or before the 8/15, 2018 shall implement a truancy intervention model identified in the Connecticut state. Do we let that same date stay? The board of the board on or before the October, I'm sorry, for the 8th to 15th, 2018. If that statement still appears instead of changing that date?
I'm trying to find exactly where you are in the policy. I
Oh,
apologize, Ms.
boy, let
Cooper.
me see. You had to
Um,
go to, come after remediation of truancy. Follow that all the way down.
Oh, right here. No.
So Mrs. Cooper, are you looking at the existing policy or are you looking at the proposed CABE policy?
I'm looking at,
Oh, I
guess
see
this,
it's under,
you see what I'm saying?
I do
511.
see it under, on
Okay,
CABE. It's under,
I just wondered what was
it's under
that,
the regulation, Kelly.
right? So that stays as far as 2018. That
So,
I
yeah. So under the
Okay.
regulation, that would actually be updated after the adoption of the policy. I
Okay,
apologize,
that's
that's
what
why I
it-
didn't
okay.
see it. Yeah, so we are only going through the policy, Ms. Cooper. So that would be something that we would update the regulations upon approval of the policy and of course inform the board.
Okay, thank you. I'm sorry to get off track, but
No, that's a good
Okay.
question. I was like, where, I know I saw it, but I couldn't recall where in the policy. There's been a lot.
okay, okay.
Were there other questions?
Teresa?
This is going to sound crazy, especially to Anita. What's the difference between guidance counselors and school counselors?
Referring to the same group of people. I think guidance counselors and please, Ms. Harris, if you would like to interject, please share. Guidance counselors was the former term used, more frequently is referred to as school counselor now, but you're referring to the same group of individuals.
Mhm.
Thank you. Because I saw them use the term used together and I'm going.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any other comments or concerns? I am now looking for a motion to recommend to the full board for first read of policy 5113.2, students truancy.
I make that motion.
Thank you very much, Al. May I have a second on that motion, please?
Second,
Juanita, I'll give that second to you. Thank you so much. Committee members, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion so carries. We're now at 7:45. I just want to thank everybody who is on this call, our administrators, Kelly and Dr. Casimiro, Ken for hanging out with us while we tape this, and to all of our committee members. I certainly appreciate your time this evening. We got a lot done, and I'm very appreciative of the fact that even though we had some robust conversation about these policies and did not always see eye to eye on it, I appreciate everybody's willingness to move these policies forward for the betterment of our district and for our students. So thank you. Looking for a motion to adjourn, please.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you, Terry. Thank you, Michelle. All those in favor, please signify by saying